Hi everyone, Crista Cowan here with another episode of The Barefoot Genealogist. Today we are talking about your online tree at Ancestry, and specifically we're going to spend a few minutes talking about notes versus comments, where those are located on your tree, how to utilize them, and I'll probably throw in a little bit of genealogy methodology today as well. Not going to be a long presentation, so I hope you can stick with us through all of it. Let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to give you the basic information right up front, and then we're going to actually go to the website to talk about where this information lives in your online tree. So first, let's talk about notes. Notes are private, and they are only viewable by the tree owner and any invited editors. And that's even if your tree is public. So on Ancestry, you have the option with your tree settings to be private or public. A public tree means anyone who has an Ancestry subscription can view your tree. A private tree means only the people you specifically invite can view your tree. Now, anybody who has a tree, public or private, also has the option of inviting anyone who does not currently have an Ancestry subscription to view their tree. They do not have to have a subscription to view a tree if they are invited. And when you invite people to your tree, you have 3 levels of permission. Those levels are guest, which just means they can view your tree and that's all. Contributor, which means they can add to your tree. Or editor, which basically gives them the same rights that you have as the tree owner. The only thing they can't do is delete your entire tree in one fell swoop. So I'm always very, very careful with who I give editor privileges to. However, editors do have the ability to see notes. And like I mentioned, notes are private even if your tree is public. So the way that I use notes, that's where I keep all of my research notes. Information that I'm uncovering as I am researching this family. It's where I do my source citations and I write up my analysis as part of the genealogical proof standard. So that's notes. Comments are public, and comments can be created by anyone who can view your tree, okay? Now this is where the public or private tree thing gets a little tricky, okay? So if I can see a tree, then I can leave a comment and I can see comments. But remember, I can't see all trees. I can only see public trees and private trees that I have been invited to. So if I can see the tree, I can see comments and I can leave comments, which means my tree is public. Any one of you could come to my tree and could see my comments. I do have a couple of trees that I've worked on for other people that are private. And so only the people who are invited to those trees can see the comments. Okay, so comments are public. Anybody who can view your tree can view the comments on your tree. And anyone who can view a tree can leave comments on your tree. And then finally, and we'll just talk briefly about this, are inline descriptions. So when you have created a fact on your timeline, you do have the option to leave or create a description. Those are viewable by anyone who can see your tree, but as the tree owner, you and your editors are the only people who can create those descriptions, okay? So those are kind of the 3 different levels, and I use all 3 of these in varying degrees. I use notes probably the most heavily because of my research style, but you need to figure out, based on this information, what's going to work best for you. So let's just go to the tree now and take a look at where this information lives. So this is a part of my tree, and I'm going to go in here to my great-great-grandfather, George Lawrence, and we're going to pull up his profile. And you'll notice that I have my tree tools turned on. Now let me make this is the normal size that I use when I'm working on my computer, but if I make it a little bit bigger so that you can see it here on this the video screen, There we go. Okay. So typically I don't view it this large, but for the sake of demonstration, I just want to make sure everybody can see here. So I've enlarged the size of this, and you'll see here there is a toolbar just underneath his profile header information. If you do not see that in your online tree, you can just go to Tools, and at the bottom there's an option there to show the research tools. If I click on that, it goes away. No check mark. If I click it again, it comes back, and now you can see I have that check mark telling me that my toolbar is turned on. And that's where I'm going to be able to jump back and forth to the tree. If I want to view him in the tree, I can jump there. If I want to view notes and comments, we'll look at that here in just a second. If we want to merge with duplicate, sometimes we end up with duplicates in our tree either because we've attached a record and it allowed it to add a person to our tree instead of notifying the merge process that this was person was already in my tree. Or in the case of this particular branch of my family where I end up with cousins marrying cousins, sometimes I end up coming back to the same person in my research, and lo and behold, they're already in my tree, but I didn't realize that at the time. So merge with duplicate is a great feature so that I don't have to go through deleting people. I just merge the people that are the same. I can save information in my tree. I can print this profile page, and then Member Connect, based on popular feedback to Ancestry, has been added to the new Ancestry experience, and you can find it there in the toolbar. Okay. Now just below that is your tabs for your different views of this particular profile. I live on the Facts tab. That's the Research tab. Life Story is the Storytelling tab. Gallery is where you're going to find all your media images. Hints is these are the hints for this particular individual of records that Ancestry is serving up to me that might have to do with this person. But Facts, that's my research home base, and these are sticky. So once I've chosen to work in Life Story or to work in Facts, as I move from profile to profile within my tree, it will stay that way. Today we're talking about notes and comments though, so let me go ahead and click. Regardless of which one of these buttons you click, it's going to open up a side panel, and I love this for a couple of reasons. It gives me, it slides this out so that I can view it right there. It used to actually pop up a screen over the top of the profile, and that was a little difficult because then you couldn't see what was underneath it. This slides it out on the side so that you can still view the profile information, and you'll notice the notes are what we call an inline scroll, so it actually, or an independent scroll, so it actually, I can scroll up and down the timeline to look at information, or I can scroll up and down the notes to look at information, and they are independent scrolling features, which is fantastic because, again, that way I can line things up. If I have a lot of text or if I have a lot of stuff in my timeline, I can line those up so that I can be looking at the things I need to look at. Now, these notes are fully editable. You'll notice I've gone through this and just added some weird spacing just so that I can make some changes here so that you can see what happens as I do that. So as I go through and I maybe just clean up the formatting of this a little bit, it is an auto save. So there's no save button once I've edited some of these notes, but you'll notice then this little changes saved pops up occasionally. So it just auto saves as I make some of those changes. Now, if you're on a slower internet connection, that might not happen as quickly or as readily. So always make sure you just double check that button that comes up that says changes saved. Now what happens is if I make changes and it hasn't saved, and then I try to go to something else in my tree, I'll get this little pop-up box that says, confirm navigation, are you sure you want to leave this page? Because if I leave this page and it hasn't saved any of the new changes, that's where I'm going to get this button. And so if I just click stay on page and then wait for this to catch up to me, then it will make sure that it saves my comments or my notes. So that's just some of the functionality of that notes feature. Now the comments are in the exact same place, just a different tab here, so I can toggle between notes and comments. Now remember, notes private, even if your tree is public. Comments are public to anyone who can see your tree, and anyone can leave comments. Only the tree owner and editors can create those notes. If I come over here to his spouse, not going to wait for that to change. And there's something that you'll notice here. So I put notes on absolutely everybody, and notes are just like a giant text box, right? So I have these notes, and I don't have individual notes. I have just lots and lots and lots of notes written in here, and things formatted. Here's how I use my notes. You'll notice I actually transcribe every record I find. So you'll see I've got census records and probate records and death records and all sorts of things listed in my notes. I put them in chronological order of the life of the person. That way I can, like I said earlier, kind of match up the life event with what's happening over here in the notes. These are also my research notes. So you'll see sometimes I have little research to do, and I bold those so that they jump off the page at me. Sometimes as I'm transcribing a record, I will put some contextual information into italics. For example, in this case, in the 1860 census, Charity is 16, and she's living with her husband, and her sister and the family of her sister are enumerated next door, and then their parents are enumerated on the same page. And so I just made a note of that proximity that they're living to each other on this note for this particular census. So that's one of the ways in which I use notes. Another way that I use notes is not just for research to-dos, but also for information that I'm trying to understand or that I need to analyze. So one of the steps of the genealogical proof standard is that we do this correlation and analysis of the evidence that we've collected. And sometimes that means that I have to write out my own questions, and I have to figure out what different records mean, or I might need more information in order to come to some kind of a conclusion about the information that I'm looking at. And so I'll write those down again and bold them so that I have this research note about what it is that I need to still work on in this particular profile, or what information I still need to collect. Sometimes they're mull and ponder questions. Mull and ponder is a phrase that Mark Lowe uses. Mark Lowe is an expert genealogist. He's done 1 or 2 Ancestry Academy classes for us. If you ever have the opportunity at a genealogical conference or through Ancestry Academy to take a class from him, I highly recommend it. But one of his favorite phrases as it relates to family history is mull and ponder, where sometimes we just need to take a step back from our research for a little bit. We need to have written out this information. We need to have written out our questions, and then we just need to kind of chew on it, let it turn in our brain, come back to it with fresh eyes so that we can see the things we couldn't see before, so that our mind can work putting together some of those patterns. And so sometimes I'll write those mull and ponder questions directly here in my research notes as well. And so you'll see record transcriptions, research notes, observations, and then sometimes I'll write very specific conclusions. The final step of the genealogical proof standard is that we write out well-reasoned conclusions about why we decided that these were her parents, or why we believe that this woman who is born on this date is actually the spouse of this person, even though we may have 2 or 3 pieces of evidence that may conflict and tell a different story. So I write out my research conclusions in those notes as well. Now remember, notes are only viewable by myself as the tree owner, even though my tree is public, which means that if anybody comes and looks at my tree, they're not going to see any of these notes. And so if I have come to some research conclusion and I want to make sure that it is public, I have a few options. I can create a comment. Now you'll notice here on the comment field, let me make that bigger again. You'll notice here under view comments it says 1, because comments are actually handled by the technology different than notes. Notes are just one giant text box, almost, just you can just put in as much information as you want. I have yet to hit a character limit on my notes. Some of my notes are super extensive, but comments are individual things, and you'll see what I mean when I click here, right? So here is a comment on this particular profile. This comment is public. I made it, but anybody could come in here and make a comment on this tree. In this case, what I've done is I've actually taken that research note and copied and pasted it over here, just a snippet of it, because I'm curious about the land that she owned, that she disposed of in her will. I think it's from her first husband's military service. As a matter of fact, her first husband died in the Civil War. That's how we believe she came to know her second husband, was because he had served with her first husband. And when her first husband died, he came to Arkansas. Her second husband came to Arkansas specifically looking for her, based on the information that her first husband had shared with him. And so here we have this note about the land, and I haven't been able to discover anything about it, and so I just put it out there. So if anybody comes and looks at this profile, they will see that there's a comment. They can view the comment, and if they have any additional information that can help with this, I would hope that they would also leave a comment. Now, comments do have a 1,200 character limit per comment. The purpose of comments are just to share pieces of information or ask questions or clarify things. I use comments when I'm viewing other people's trees as a way to share evidence that I've discovered that might conflict with what they have. So for example, if I found a relative in a tree and they had the wrong spouse attached, I might come in here and leave a comment on that person that says, that I believe, based on the evidence that I found, that this person was actually married to this person, person B, not person A, like's listed in the tree, and here's the evidence that I've collected that shows that. Again, I do that to start a dialogue with the person who owns the tree, but also so that anybody else who comes and views this particular tree can see that there's a comment, can look at my evidence, can look at their evidence, and can kind of weigh those two things against each other. Now, as the tree owner, okay, so if somebody came to my tree and left some totally inappropriate comment, or if they left evidence and then we were able to come to a different conclusion, I have the ability to delete those comments. Now, if we were having a discussion about evidence, I would probably actually leave those comments. It doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. What matters is, what does the evidence say? And if we've just had a discussion about evidence and come to a conclusion about a person or some facts or events or relationships in that person's life, I would probably leave that series of comments in my tree, because then the next person who comes along, I don't have to have the same conversation with them. I can just point them to the comments and say, you know what, thank you for your feedback, but really person A is her spouse. We've already debated this based on the evidence, and here's the conclusion that we came to. So lots of different ways to use comments, but that's how I choose to use comments as a way to communicate with other people who are viewing profiles on my tree, and then I use comments on other trees as a way to communicate with them about some of that evidence. Now, if I wanted this information, let's say I finished doing all this research and all of my research to-do notes have been cleaned up, and I've got all of my source citations and all sorts of stuff just written out here in these notes, and I write them a little bit like narratives. So I still attach the source citation here front and center on the new Ancestry. I love that that's where they are. It reinforces the importance of sources on trees. And so I can still, open up any one of these source citations and see the image, view the record, go to the citation details, look at what the associated facts are about that particular citation. I can also add some information to this source citation if I so feel the need to do so. I can edit that. So Ancestry creates a source citation for me automatically anytime I add records, but I can augment that source citation with additional information. I can edit it with additional information if I so choose. And so that is there for everyone to view. But if I decided I wanted this as a narrative to be copied so that it was publicly viewable, all I have to do is copy and paste it, and then I can create a story with this information that I can then attach as a media item in the media gallery to this individual. That then becomes viewable by everyone. Or if I so choose, now I've chosen not to do this, but I know a lot of people do, I can actually go through each of these facts that have been created about each of these individuals, and I love the little purple lines that connect me so that I know the birth fact is supported by these 8 sources, and the residence fact for 1850 is supported by that one source, and you just work your way through those different sources. But I can edit any one of these, and I can actually add notes or a description about that particular fact. Now, the description field, the way I use it, this is where I enter a historical location. So, for example, if Green Forest was in a different county, it wasn't, but if it was at the time that she was married, I could put the historical location. Historical location in 1859 was, and then put the complete name of the historical location. That way I've preserved the historical location here in the description, and it'll show up in the timeline. But I've also standardized my location in the location field based on Ancestry's location dictionary that then allows some of the mapping features and some of those other things to work appropriately. I can also add additional information to this description field outside of historical location. Maybe I can add a note about the specific church that they were married in, or if they were married by a justice of the peace, or if they were married in a location other than the location that they lived, why they might have done that. Or in this case, I could add information about how she met her husband, if I knew that, or any number of things. And then aside from the source citations that I might have attached to this fact, a marriage record or other thing, I could maybe then add some additional media. Now, additional media is not going to be a marriage certificate in this case. A marriage certificate is going to be a source, and I'm going to create a source citation, attach that media to that, because a marriage certificate is going to include a lot more information than just about the marriage. A marriage certificate can be a source for names, gender, birth date, parents' names, occupations, residences. So anything that is a source of information should have a source citation created for it, and then that source citation should be attached to those facts. The kinds of media that I would attach to a fact would be something like maybe a wedding photograph, something that is not necessarily a source of information, but that I still want to have attached to a specific fact. Now, if I had some big story about their wedding that was going to take up a whole lot more than this particular description field, I might also attach that as a media item where I could do that way. But remember, if it's a source of information that could source multiple facts in my timeline, I'm going to create a source citation. Otherwise, I can add the media item directly to the fact. So those are some of the ways that I use notes, comments, and descriptions, inline descriptions in my timeline. And just quick reiteration, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Notes are private, only viewable by the tree owner and invited editors, and that's true if your tree is public or private. Comments are public to anyone who can view your tree, and anyone who can view your tree, whether public or private, can also leave notes. However, you have control over whether those notes remain on your tree or not. And then inline descriptions in those timelines, those are viewable by anyone who can view your tree, whether your tree is public or private. Well, hopefully that was useful just to help you know where some of the features exist in the new Ancestry experience, helping you understand why some of those features exist, where they exist, and how I use them for family history research. That's all I have prepared for you today. Until next time, have fun climbing your family tree.